Welcome to the latest in this advanced series of ADF Insider. My name is Grant Ronald and I'm a Senior Group Product Manager at Oracle in the Application Development Tools division. And today we're going to be looking at how to use ADF page templates and declarative components. One of the challenges you have when building applications is ensuring consistency in terms of the look and feel, the layout of your pages, and the types of components that people are using to build pages. ADF addresses this in a number of different ways, and we're going to look at page templates and declarative components. So page templates allow you to define, as you would expect, a template in which all your other pages can be based, and this ensures a consistent look and feel of all your application pages. ADF page templates are referenced, which means that if in the future your page template changes, maybe the company logo changes or some new copyright information that's on the page changes, then any page that uses that template automatically updates and receives those changes. The other area we're going to look at is declarative components. Declarative components are a really useful feature in that when you're building applications based from checkboxes and text fields and buttons, you might find that there are groupings of these basic UI components that you want to bring together. For example, a reusable toolbar, or you might find that there's a particular layout for a customer's details that you're using over and over again. With declarative components, you can build this component and deploy it to all your developers who can then reuse that as a single component rather than having to build it up from its constituent parts. So let's first of all look at page templates. So as I said, page template is pretty much as you would expect. It allows you to define a page which looks and you build it exactly as you would any other ADF page, but you define areas called facets. Facets are just simply areas in the template where the developer who's using or consuming this template would put their own content. So on the screenshot you can see here to the top right we have a template in which we've defined a company logo, and there are in fact a couple of areas on the page that we've defined as facets, a main area and an accordion panel to the left, in which the user of the component or the user of this template can put their own content. And this ensures that you get a consistent look and feel. And you'll notice that in the screenshot showing the use of the template, it's graying out the areas that the user of that template cannot change. So this ensures that you get a consistent look and feel while giving defined areas in which content can be placed on that page. So facets define the areas in the page that the developer who's using the template can put his own content. There is also another feature of templates called attributes, and this is a bit like passing parameters in a procedure call. It's a way of defining parameters or attributes to the template so that areas which might not be editable, for example the label that's used in the accordion panel on the left in the screenshot, can be set up to reference an attribute, and the person using that template can set the value of that attribute. So this gives a little bit of flexibility in defining the look and feel of your application, but allowing the user who's using this template to build in a little bit of flexibility to add in some of their own details. And the best way is to show this in a demo. Okay, so let's start by creating a new page template. So we'll create page template, and let's give the template a name, and we'll call it our corporate template. This is the template we're using for our corporate look and feel. And ADF includes a number of features, including these quick start layouts, which give you default common layouts, and we're going to choose a 2-column with a locked area at the top in which we're going to put the company logo. And now we'll define the different areas or facets in which will allow the user of the template to put their own content. So we'll have a main area, and this main area will be where the main content of the page will go. And on the left hand column we're going to have an accordion panel with 2 accordions within there, and one called the top accordion panel, one called the bottom accordion panel. These names really don't matter, it's just giving obviously an indication of what their function are. Let's also add a couple of attributes. Well, let's add 3 attributes. So we want to pass in on the instance of the template a label that will be used for the top accordion panel, a label that will be used for the bottom accordion panel, and let's also include an integer attribute. And this integer attribute will be used to define the position of the splitter on the template. So that's the area that divides the left hand column from the right hand column. Let's click OK, and there's our page, and we can start building our page template now. And the first thing we'll add is a corporate logo to the top area. Let's readjust that size slightly. And then we're going to define the different areas in which we can have content for the person who's using this template. So in the left hand area we're going to have an accordion panel that's got 2 different panels within inside that. There we go. And the next thing is to define the different areas or facets. So we're saying that this bottom accordion panel can be have content placed in it. This top accordion panel can have content placed in it, and also the main area as well. And we can also use the structure panel to drop these facets. So the facet is just saying which area in the screen can the user of this template put their own content. And I'm just going to move this about because it's inside a scroll layout, which I'm going to remove. Because we want that facet to be the whole of that center area. So there we go. So that's our page template complete. Now what about our attributes? We defined 3 attributes, and one of the attributes we defined was the splitter position. So rather than the splitter position, which is the area that defines the left hand column, the right hand column, to be a literal value of 140, we want that value to be set using one of the attributes we've set up. This means that anyone who uses this template can define their own splitter position, where this center pane is positioned. And in a similar way, we want the top accordion panel, rather than hard coding a label, we want that to reference an attribute. So again, we go to the expression builder. Here we can see under the attributes node the top label, and that is the attribute we defined in the template. So we'll do the same for the bottom accordion panel. So anyone using this template can define their own splitter position and their own labels for those areas in the template, or the instance of the template. And let's save that. So now let's look at how we can create a page based on that template. So let's create a brand new page. We'll call it My Page 1, and now we're defining that it's based on the template that we've just defined. So here we got corporate template, and the page opens in the page designer. And the first thing you'll notice when the page opens is that parts of the screen are grayed out. This means they can't be changed. Only the facet areas are the places where we can put content. So you might want to drop a panel collection in the middle, but you'll notice that it can only be dropped within a facet, not one of the other areas. And let's look at how we can set these attributes. So if I select the page template and look at the property inspector, you'll see the attributes that we define, bottom label, splitter position, and top label, are there as properties. So I can now set this is the top label, and you'll see that changing in the template instance that we've got for this page. There's a bottom label, and let's set a splitter position of 130. Now let's create a second page, and again we're ensuring a consistent look and feel for this page 2 because it's based on the same template, but we're allowing a little bit of customization by allowing the use of that template instance to change the attributes. So in this instance we're going to have a different label at the bottom. We're going to have a different label at the top panel, and the splitter position will be in a different place as well. So we've got two pages based on the same template but with a slightly different look to it because we've parameterized the instance of the template. So let's look at ADF declarative components. As we mentioned earlier, declarative components are a way of building composite components based on simple components like a panel box or a text field, and building that together to be one standalone composite component. So the example we have on the screenshot here is you may decide that in your application you're often editing customer details, and this appears on maybe lots of different screens. So rather than having every developer build a customer details panel themselves, the idea is that you would build a single customer details panel, and that panel would be deployed into a library that could be added to any other project, and when it's added to that project it would actually appear on the component palette as a component along with all the other default components you get like text fields and checkboxes and buttons. Declarative components like templates allow you to define facets and attributes. So with a facet it allows you to define an extra area within the declarative component where the user of the declarative component can add their own content, and an attribute allows you to parameterize this declarative component so that when it gets used, pieces of information can be passed into that declarative component. So it might be labels or values for fields. And again, the best way is to show this using the demo. So let's have a look at declarative components. Okay, so let's look at how we can create a declarative component. We've got a new project here. We're creating a new ADF faces declarative component, and let's give it a name, and it's going to be a customers panel, so we'll call it customers panel. We need to add the name of a library in which this component is going to live, so let's call it component library, and we'll give it a prefix of CL for component library. And just like page templates, this declarative component will have facets and attributes. So let's create an area where we might have some extra content that the user of the declarative component can add fields. And let's define attributes. Now this declarative component will be used for our customer's details, so we want an attribute for customer first name, which is a string, customer last name, and the email address. And this allows the user of the declarative component to pass in information, in which case it's actually going to be the data that we want displayed in the declarative component. Let's click OK. And in the visual editor we get the standard ability to create the component just as we would do with any other page. So I'm going to drag on a panel box. Let's change the label here on the panel box. And inside this panel box I'm going to add the 3 fields that require for these reusable panel of customer details. So let's have 3 input text fields, 1, 2, and 3. And let's change the labels on these. Customer first name. Let's have the second field customer last name, and the third field will be email address. Actually that's in the value field. Let's copy that into the label field. Now you'll notice that we don't have things perfectly aligned in this declarative component. Easily solved. Let's drop in a panel form layout, and let's put those 3 text fields as a child or children of the panel form layout, and there you see it automatically lines everything up for us. And as I say, we defined a facet here called extra. This just means that if the user of this component wanted to maybe add more fields, they could do it in this extra facet, this other area that we've defined in the template or the declarative component. Now the next thing is we need to hook up the value of each of these fields to the attributes. So in the expression builder, here's the attributes we declared for the declarative component: first name, last name, and of course the email address as well. So this means that anyone using this declarative component can pass in the values that will be displayed for each of those first name, last name, and email fields. So let's save that. And the next stage is we need to deploy that declarative component to a file called an ADF library. So let's give this a name. My declarative component lib, and it's an ADF jar or an ADF library jar file. So that declarative component will be zipped up and put into that ADF library jar file, and the last step is we need to actually deploy that jar file. Here it is, here, my declarative component library, to the file system. So JDeveloper is going to take that declarative component, put it into a special library jar file, and it's going to deploy it onto the file system for me. And here, if I look in the ADF or the JDeveloper log window, we'll see the deployment completes, and there is the location of the jar file there. So I'm just going to take a copy of that because I'm going to need that in a few seconds time. So let me just copy that to the clipboard. So that's us finished. We've created the declarative component. So the idea is now we're switching projects. We're a new developer working on a new project, and we would like to use that declarative component on this page. So this is actually the pages we used earlier for demonstrating the page templates. And I want to add that declarative component to this project. So the first thing I have to do is make a connection to the file system, because remember we deployed that declarative component to the file system. So I'm creating a connection to the file system. We just give this connection a name, and I can either input that location directly, or I could press the browse button and browse the file system for the location of that library. It's the same thing. So let's select test the connection. Okay, so we now have a connection to that jar file, and here we can see it under this node here. There's the jar file. If I right click, select the project and right click and say that we now want to add that jar file, that declarative component, to this project. So that library has now been added to this project, which means that when it comes to designing this page, if I go back to my component palette, there's my component library that I created, and there's the customer, the reusable declarative component that I can drag and drop onto the page just like any other component. So there we go. Now remember that we set up some attributes, and so I would like to create bindings because I want to pass real data values into that declarative component. So the first thing I'm going to do is create bindings for those pieces of data, okay, because I'm showing a table of customers, and I want to create separate attribute value bindings for the first name, the last name, and the email address, and I'm going to pass the values of those bindings into the declarative component. So that's me creating those bindings, and I now want to hook those bindings up to the attributes. So again, just like page templates, I can select the declarative component. Here it is in the structure panel, and there are the attributes in the property inspector. So there we go. For this field, we're going to hook up the customer's email address to the input value. The customer's first name attribute is going to be hooked up to the customer's first name input value, and the customer last name attribute that we defined on the declarative component is going to be hooked up to this last binding, which is the customer's last name input value. So that declarative component is now hooked up to those data values via the attributes that it exposes. I'm just going to quickly put in a couple of buttons here. Let's create a toolbar, and into that toolbar we're going to drop next and previous button so that we can navigate through those records. There's the next button as a toolbar button, and let's drop a previous button on, but we can drop that on the structure panel as well. And we're ready to run. And here's our page, and it shows the table of customers, and if I select customers, you can see the customers reusable declarative panel on the left hand side updating, because those bindings are there and they're passing the values into the declarative component as you do expect. So to summarize, you've seen ADF page templates, and ADF page templates allow you to build a consistent look and feel of your application by allowing a corporate definition of a page to be defined within a template. And each template has what's called facets. Those are just named areas within the template where the user of the template can place their own content. And a template can also have attributes as well. And attributes are just ways of parameterizing information into the instance of a template. You've also seen ADF declarative components, and these allow you to build reusable composite components such as a toolbar or a reusable customer panel. And again, like page templates, each of these declarative components can have facets, so named areas in which extra content can be placed by the user of the declarative component, and also have attributes as well, so data values or labels or those kind of information can be passed into the declarative component as well. To learn more, you can go to the JDeveloper homepage on oracle.com, and please look out for more in the ADF Insider series. Thank you very much for listening.